Ahoy, everybody. We're here today to talk about effective pitching strategies, specifically for the UROP Symposium pitch that you're giving, the 3-minute pitch, the pitch that you might be dreading. But hopefully after this presentation, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable about it, and you are going to be able to have all the tools that you need to put together a very compelling and high-level 3-minute pitch to help explain your research in a way that people will understand and they'll actually care about the ideas that you are researching to put forth into the world. So let's get going. I will say right out the gates that the more you learn, the more you earn. And I think this is important because what we're talking about here today is going to serve you not just for this 3-minute pitch, but it's going to serve you for the rest of your life. And just like any type of education, if you think of it in longer terms, it's going to add to your bottom line. So use this as an exercise to help yourself out, not only now, but in the future. My name is Ryan Foland. I am a speaker. I'm an author. I am a ginger. The ginger refers to my freckles and my red hair, which is getting a little white here and there. But, you know, as a kid, I was made fun of for my freckles, but I've reclaimed it and I am the proudest ginger that you'll know. I'm also excited to share that I'm the new director at the ANtrepreneur Center. So I hope to see you a lot more as you come in to help take your research, translate it to a business, hey, maybe come up with a new idea, or just come on over to the ANtrepreneur Center to join other student teams. Now, I want you to ask yourself, I don't see the answer here, but ask yourself this question: how confident are you right now at the beginning of this workshop about pitching your business? Okay, on a scale of 0 to 10. Now, when we did this live in the ANtrepreneur Center, we literally had somebody at a 0.5. and we had somebody at a 10. So I'm not here to judge you on where your number is. My goal is by the end of this presentation, you will move up on that scale. So let me start by telling a little bit about my story. So who am I? Who's this guy? You know, I grew up in a family of educators. So my parents, they always would take us to Catalina. And that's where I really found my passion for nature and sailing and the ocean. It didn't help me when I come back every summer after not hanging out with friends, and I'd have bleach blonde hair, more freckles, and no one really was, nobody was that friendly to me. Martial arts solved the problem, especially with the bullies. I got into playing hockey. I was a hockey goaltender. I love skateboarding, still do, got into that during high school. Ironically, the same kids that made fun of me in elementary school for my freckles voted me as senior class president. And I went to UCSB. I thought I'd make it in Hollywood. I didn't. I ended up making money in mortgages until that crashed. Got into app development in the startup world, and here I am today at the ANtrepreneur Center. Now, why do I share this little story with you? It's because people look at my story as my experience, but people also call me an expert. Now, my question to you is the difference. What do you think is more important, your experience or your expertise? I want you to think on it, get your answer. No, it's not both. I'm going to challenge you to choose one. What do you think is most important? Tell yourself right now, experience or expertise. If you chose experience, you are correct. And the reason why I want to share this with you is that I don't want you to feel pressure to be an expert right now. This presentation is not you trying to show that you are just some expert. This presentation is an opportunity to showcase your experience. And you all have a lot of experience, even as undergrads, your life experience, your research experience. So that should be the focus. Hopefully this takes some pressure off you. Now, if we dive a little deeper conceptually here, I want you to understand that experience comes from failure. And as you probably know in research, not everything works out. So be proud of the failures that you've had, because when you fail, you learn, and that turns into your experience. So if at the end of your presentation, people are like, wow, this person has a unique experience that they're bringing to the table, that's what you want. Your experience is showcased in your story. And I'm going to share with you later on about how we're going to start and end with a story so that you're more memorable and more personable. Failures leads to experience, which leads to stories, and that's how you showcase your skills. Storytelling is going to be your greatest asset, whether it's this pitch, whether it's a job interview, whether it's pitching for investors for your multi-million-dollar raise, when your research turns into a big idea. Pitching is an art form. And I say that because you can do this however you want. And there's no one way to do it. But if you do it right, influence is also an art form. So what is influence? What do you think it is? What would you put if you finish the sentence? Influence is what? Maybe it's power. Maybe it's someone persuading you. Maybe it's the ability for somebody to move you emotionally. Well, I want you to think about your answer. Spoiler alert, your answer is likely right. I think influence comes in all forms, but there are two ways, two elements that I think are important. And this is just something to keep in the back of your mind. Influence is the art of persuasion. And at the end of the day, if you can help change the way people think and get them to take action, you're truly being influential. Think about that. Let's say if you wanted to persuade someone to recycle their plastics. Okay, to do that, you have to fundamentally change the way they think and get them to take action. Because if you change the way they think, but they still don't recycle, as far as action, nothing happens. And if they go ahead and recycle, but then don't fundamentally believe that this is something that they need to do consistently, then they're not going to do it on the long term. Do a quick little exercise here. Entertain me for a second. I want you to fold your arms. So fold your arms just like you would normally fold them, okay? Feels comfortable enough? Well, I want you to fold your arms the other way. And it probably is going to feel awkward. Okay, fold your arms normal and then fold them the other way. It feels weird, right? And it should feel weird. And the reason I'm sharing this little exercise with you is because what I'm going to share with you today is going to feel awkward. It's going to feel weird. It's not going to feel comfortable. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it. You just have to practice it. So come into this with an open mind. When we talk about pitching, we pitch all over the place. We pitch all the time. We're pitching what Netflix series to watch. We're pitching what we want to do in a student-led project. We're pitching our fellow team members about the direction of our research. So don't just think of this as a 3-minute pitch. Think about these concepts as something that you can use to help influence people for the rest of your life. So people will ask you often, what do you do? And at the end of the day, this is like the cornerstone of why you're pitching. Somebody's going to ask you, hey, what do you do? Now's your opportunity to share. Your answer is your 3-minute pitch. But I think that if we look at a top level of communicating, when you keep things simple, that's where things are powerful. If you ask me what you do, wait, if I ask you what you do and you ramble on for like 5 or 10 minutes straight, that's not simple. There's nothing simple about that. And it becomes confusing. So 3 minutes is a hard thing to do because you have so much information you want to share. So we're going to break it down to its components. Simple does not mean easy. I say it again, simple does not make easy. You see, it is more difficult to make things simple than it is difficult to make things complex. If I just ask you to ramble on, that's easy to ramble on. But if I say, explain it to me in a sentence, explain it to me in a minute, explain it to me in 2 or 3 minutes max, then it becomes difficult. So don't be surprised if this process is a difficult process. The more you talk, the less people listen. And the less you talk, the more people will ask questions. Questions is what leads to curiosity. Curiosity is what leads to connection. Connection is how you get people interested. And so think of your 3-minute pitch as an opportunity to say less so that you can engage with your listeners more. So we're talking about what you do. I want to ask you, what do you think is more important? What you do or the problem that you solve? Now, I want you to think about this hypothetically. Do you think people care more about, let's say, what your research is, what you're doing, or do they care about the problem that your research is solving? Think about it, make your answer. I believe that people only care about the problem that you solve. And sometimes you see this play out in real life, where somebody will ask you, what do you do? And you're excited because they ask you, and then you tell them what you do, but you kind of notice they might not be fully paying attention. And then as soon as you're done, it's almost like they expect you to ask them what they do. So what do you do? And then they just babble and keep going. And you're kind of half listening because you're thinking, were they actually listening to what I said when I was telling them what I do? And then you both finish and you go, okay, nice to meet you. And you move on. And that is why I believe people care more about the problem that you solve. So if you think about it, when somebody asks you what you do, I challenge you to flip the script and say, well, you know what? I do a lot of things, but in particular, there's one problem that I'm really excited to solve. If you do that, then you stop talking, they will ask you, well, what problem do you solve? And I genuinely think people are more interested in understanding the problem that you solve. And if they care about the problem that you solve, they're going to care about what you do to solve it. So the first question I have for you is, what problem do you solve? Can you tell me the problem that you solve in just one sentence? What problem does your research solve? The mistakes people make when they're answering this question is that they usually just share their solution. They say, well, we are doing this, or our research is doing that. No, no, no. Can you tell me the problem that you solve with no mention of what your solution is? Because remember, if you fundamentally believe that people care more about the problem that you solve, then it's important to be able to articulate that. And the problem is one of the key components that you need to get across in this 3-minute pitch. The problem with stating the problem is sometimes there's multiple problems. So if you found yourself saying, well, the problem is that it's too slow, the problem is that it's too expensive, and the problem is it doesn't look good. Right? They're just hypothetical examples. Well, if you give me 3 examples of a problem and you ask me, is that a problem? How do I know it's a full problem? I can't really answer, because what if speed doesn't matter to me? What if price doesn't matter to me? And what if looks don't matter to me? So I want you to focus on explaining one big problem that you're solving. Now, if there are multiple problems, here's a quick solution for that. If you, let's say, your research approaches 5 different problems, and you're like, those are the 5 problems. The worst thing you could do is say, I'm solving this problem and this problem and this problem and this problem. So here's a fun little exercise. Take the number of problems that you think you're solving and split up a triangle into that many different variations. Then you are going to make a list of the problems starting at the lowest level, which are the lowest problems, the medium problems, and eventually finding of those problems, what is the biggest problem that you're solving? And instead of saying the problem is this and this and this and this, don't say that. The concept here is that you solve the top problem, the biggest problem of all of them, which results in some of these other problems. And if you phrase it in that way and you think about it that way, it's easier to convince somebody that you're solving one big problem, which results in all these other problems, than convincing them that you solve all kinds of problems. So keep that in mind as you keep focused. The next question for you has to do with a piece of paper. Have you ever had a paper cut, right? Like there's a little post-it note here. If I were to take my finger and go, hold on. Ooh, I think I got it. What's the difference between a paper cut, or let's say I have a knife, for example, real knife, and I was to accidentally make a chop. Oh God, I just chopped my finger off. What is the difference if I cut myself with a paper cut, or if I actually cut my finger off, and like there'd be blood that would be splattered all over the place right now, and my finger would be, inching along the floor? What's the difference between those two? Yeah, it's a little weird question. Yes, it's going to be more severe. Yes, it's going to hurt more. Yes, it's going to be more expensive. But the difference between a paper cut and a finger being chopped off, I want you to understand, has to do with how somebody else reacts implicitly in their own mind. Imagine the problem that you stated. The problem is that elementary school are not engaged in their schoolwork. Okay, ask yourself, is that problem a paper cut, or is it a finger that's chopped off? And most of the time we describe the problem that we solve as a paper cut. Now, if I just came up to you and I said, hey, oh my gosh, I have a paper cut. Can you please help me out? You'd be like, dude, it's a paper cut. What do you want me to do? But if I rolled up to you, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've accidentally cut off my finger. Can you please help me? Help me, call 911. Help. Like, you're going to freak out and you're going to be like, okay, this is serious. What do we need to do to solve this problem? And so when you're articulating the problem that you're solving in your presentation, you need to make sure it feels like a finger's been chopped off. What is the result of this problem? And when you tap into that, you will implicitly get people to start to think that we need to do something about this, as opposed to standing up on stage and going, hi, I have a paper cut and would everyone like to please help me out? No, you're essentially saying there is a finger that's been chopped off and we need to get together to fix this problem. Okay, so it's a little fun exercise. Ask yourself if the problem you're solving is a paper cut or a finger being chopped off. Now let's talk about your solution. Can you describe your solution in just one sentence? I'm sure you can, but the question is, does it just fit into one sentence, or are you explaining a whole bunch of stuff? If it's hard for you to explain your research idea in one sentence, it probably has to do with these two words. What is the difference between what and how? The difference can be seen in an iceberg. If I ask you what your solution is, and you tell me what it is, it's just surface level. You just tell me what the solution is. If I ask you how your solution works, that takes a lot more than a sentence. There's a lot of understanding that goes on. It's like getting underneath the frigid water to see this huge how underneath. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs, researchers, individuals make the mistake of answering the wrong question. If somebody asks you what you do, what your research is, the answer is going to be short. It's going to be concise. It's going to be clear. It's going to be top level. And that's the goal for this pitch, is to not focus on how it works as much. You don't have the time. You have 3 minutes. So the goal here is to focus on what your solution is. And if you do a good job at that, guess what they're going to want to know? They're going to want to know how it works. So when it comes to explaining your solution, which is a key part of what you need to get across, keep your sentences short and understand that the less you say, the more profound you are. You want to create a little bit of mystique in your presentation. So the final component here of the 3 things that you need to make sure you have in your pitch is your solution. So, is who needs your solution? I'm sorry, who is your market? So can you tell me who this is targeting? Go ahead, try it. You can just talk to the screen. It's just us here. Tell me your target market. Now, did you say the A word or the E word? Did you say anyone who or everyone who, or did you say all teachers or all students, or did you make it seem like this was everyone? If you did, it's kind of a mistake, because if you're for anyone or everyone, you are for no one. And so I want to encourage you to understand the difference between a target market and a market potential. A target market is the beachhead, the first 10 clients, the first 10 people who benefit from your research, just the few hundred that are going to start, the early adopters. Eventually, there is going to be possibly a mass adoption when this rolls out. But when you're communicating, make sure that you're letting the judges know that this is not for everyone. This is not for anyone. This is for a particular sub-market. This is for a particular people who have the problem that you solve and who could use your solution to solve it. Now, it's okay to talk about your total addressable market and how you can expand, but don't forget the importance of being specific with your target market. In other words, have great specificity. The more accurate and precise you are on where you're starting to put this research out there and the people that are going to benefit from it, the better you're going to be at convincing people this is viable. All right, so we've talked about the problem. We've talked about the solution. We've talked about the market. What is missing? Do you remember what I did in the beginning? I told you a little story. Do you remember what I said is your superpower? It's your story. So don't forget about your backstory. What was it that gave you the passion to start into research? Why this project? Was there a moment in time that made you have an epiphany that this was a problem that needed to be solved? Did you have a loved one that was affected by some sort of ailment or disease and you were just like, that's it, I got to find a solution to this? Is something personal to you, something that happened to you when you were a kid that you want to help make less challenging for the next generation? There's so much power in your story, and I'm going to suggest that you start your pitch with your story. So what is your backstory? Why are you doing this research? Answer that question, and that is what we're going to start with. Storytelling is your greatest asset because it releases chemicals. Think about which ones. Ready? Go. Okay. Can you think of any? Here's the cheat sheet. When you tell a good story, it releases dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, and cortisol in your audience. Think of the brain as like a hard drive. And when you trigger certain keys and you push certain buttons in somebody's head, chemicals are released, and that affects them. If you get people to release dopamine, they're more engaged. If you get them to release oxytocin, they're more connected. Maybe it's a heartstring story about how you lost a grandparent due to a certain type of illness, and now you are trying to find the cure. That actually drips in their head, and then they feel connected to you. If you've got energy and they're feeling good about your presentation, you make them excited, then endorphins will drip down. And if you get them to drip some cortisol, you will be more memorable. When it comes to storytelling, just simple storytelling 101, you've got to help set the frame. So you got to tell them who was there, where you were, what was happening, when it was, why it was happening, how it happened. And if you want to increase the value of the story, then play to the senses. What did you smell? What did you see? What did you feel? What did you do? How did you move? Oftentimes people give not enough information, they go on too long, or they give too much information, and they report versus reliving. So we only have time for like a 20 or 30-second vignette story. And it just needs to be simple, and it needs to set the tone. So it could be something like, back when I was in high school, sophomore year, one of my best friends shared with me that she was diagnosed with a rare type of cancer. This was traumatic, not only for her, but for me and for our families, because we didn't know why it happened. And at that point, there was no cure. That was the moment that I realized I had passion to find cures for things that we didn't know how they happened. Tragic things like cancer or illness. Okay, that was a quick little short story. I said who, what, when, where, why, how, and package it all in. So if we want to talk about how people can really get to know you in those 3 minutes, how people can want to invest in you in those 3 minutes, it's about sharing your story. So find that little vignette story and start with it. Don't go up and start with your name. Hi, my name is Ryan Foland. The research. No, it's a waste of time. You only have 3 minutes. So when you start, you need to start with the story. I'll show you exactly how that's going to work with the 3-1-3 sandwich. This is a structure that you can follow to make sure that you get all the points you want to get across in an organized way, in a way that is simple and powerful. Okay, the 3-1-3 sandwich. I'm going to disappear for a second so you can see this. It starts with a story that uncovers the problem. Then you share your solution. Then you share your market. And at the end, you share a story that is essentially the same story from the beginning, but with a happy ending, with your research implemented. So what's the story behind your idea? Think about it. What's the origin story? Now, if you don't have an origin story and you're on a research project that didn't start out of some passion driven, then tell a hypothetical story. If, for example, you're trying to find the reason, some sort of early warning sign for a certain type of disease, then you can say something to the extent of, imagine that you receive a phone call from your uncle, but instead of him talking about when he's going to come over and visit, he shares with you that he's just gotten a rare disease that's critical to his health. And instead of him visiting, you have to go visit him in the hospital. This is a real problem. People get phone calls from their relatives that are explaining that they've received some sort of diagnosis out of the blue, and their entire lives have changed. Okay, so see how that's a little story. The idea is that it uncovers a problem. And if this was my pitch about that hypothetical situation, I'd say, the problem is we don't have a cure for XYZ. Then I'd continue. So the story is what uncovers the problem. Then you only talk about the problem, let's say for 45 seconds. Really make sure people know that it's a problem like a finger being chopped off. Don't share your solution until after you've shared your problem. So your slide 1 could easily be a slide that showcases the problem. When you're done with that, then you say, the good news is my team has come up with a solution. and you explain the solution for maybe 45 seconds. Once you're done with the solution, you remind people, look, this is not for everybody. This is not for just anyone. This is for a particular type of people. Here's our go-to-market strategy to get this out there. Here's where we're going to start. And you focus on letting people know that you've done the research of who's going to care about this. This is the significance. This is the relevance. This is what the judges are looking for. And then finally, you finish with a story that is the same story, a parallel story from the beginning, but now something that has a happy ending. So this pretend story about my uncle, after you explain your problem solution market, you could say, so the next time the phone rings at a certain household and it's Uncle John, we can be rest assured that Uncle John's not sharing he just got diagnosed with something. Uncle John will be sharing that there was this research, this pre-screening test that was an early identifier of something that could have gone wrong. And now he's letting you know he's going to the hospital to get treatment so that he doesn't have to be in the hospital being treated. If you want to understand how this research can help more uncles and more family members avoid an unfortunate fate by not being pre-screened, or find me at my poster session so I can explain more. See how that works? Okay. The story creates this full loop, and speaking is called a closed loop. You start with something and you end with something. Now you have a number of different things that you're going to probably include, and there's so many different types of research. Like, how could this all be a one size fit all? It's because no matter what you want to get across, you can get that across in either the story, the problem, the solution, or the market. That's it. You just pick and choose what information you want to put where, and you stick to the structure. There is something called the law of latency and recency. What that means is that people remember what they hear in the beginning, and they remember what they hear in the end, but not so much in the middle. So if you start with a story and you end with a story, they're going to remember your story, and that's why it's so powerful. This process of the 3-1-3 sandwich can be expanded and contracted. You could use this to come up with a 30-second pitch, a 2-minute pitch, a 3-minute pitch, which you're going to come up with. It could be a 6-minute pitch, it could be a 10-minute pitch. It could even be a 45-minute presentation. So let me actually, hold on here. Let me move here and let me put this behind me. Oh, here I am. Let me wrap this up for you. What we've been talking about. Here is the deal. Let me give it to you real. Follow these 3 rules. Use them as a guide. Use them as tools. First rule is, I don't care what you do. You see, I've got problems and so do you. You won't get me interested explaining mine or pain. You got to solve a problem in a finger chop way. Rule number 2, you talk too much like a giddy little kid on a yellow school bus. Start with the what, not with the how. Make it conversational and learn to shut your mouth. Rule number 3, create intrigue. Talk about your target market to the nth degree. Tap into the FOMO of the person who is listening. Say anyone or everyone and you will be less interesting. The goal of your pitch is for them to want more. Don't miss opportunity knocking at the door. First you state the problem, then you say you solve it, and don't forget the market. Yes, that was silly. But hey, who says pitching and all this stuff can't be fun? Now, let's take a moment and think about what we just went through. I shared with you the importance of explaining the problem in a way that makes it feel like it was a finger chop. The solution in a simple way of what your solution is. Your market in a way of the target market. And then finally, the importance of wrapping that together with a story. So if you follow that format, find your origin story, have that expose the problem, explain your solution, explain your market, and end it with a story that is the same story from the beginning, but with your solution of research involved, you are set up to have a very solid and clear 3-minute pitch. Okay? Now remember, you can come into the Entrepreneur Center and you can get some help and we can do some workshopping on it, but this structure works. Trust me, it does. Now, from a memorization standpoint, the idea here, let me bring this back for us to see. The idea here is that there's a lot to memorize in 3 minutes, But if you follow this format, you just have to memorize the story and time it to where you get it to a certain consistent timing. Then you focus on how do you explain the problem, and you do the math. Do you have 45 seconds? Do you have a minute? Right? You only have 3 minutes total. So you got to split this up. So the story, problem, solution, market, and secondary story should all add up to 3 minutes. And this allows you to essentially do small run-throughs with all of, with all of the different details, but make it tight so that you're using this format to make sure that you're structuring your talk. And when you do that, that's how you can nail the 3 minutes on the spot. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about making eye contact with the camera and making an effective presentation once you've got your actual presentation developed. I'm going to share with you 4 vocal levers that you can use to improve the way you communicate your presentation. Number 1, 2, 3, and 4. You want to guess? What do you think I'm going to talk about right now? It's just a pop quiz. Really should stall for me to get some water. But if you guessed them correctly, here's the answers. Here are the 4 things that you need to do that will revolutionize the way that you present. Understand the rate of speech and how that impacts your talk, and how that can actually make a big difference. Your pitch and your melody, whether or not you are speaking monotone or actually have a little bit of melody to your voice, and tonality. Tonality comes from your face. Here's the short and sweet of it. If what you're talking about is not super important, it's okay to speak about it at the normal, if not maybe a little bit faster pace. And remember, when you're up there pitching, you're going to be nervous, so you might be speaking a little bit fast, so watch out for that. But when it comes to something that is important, make sure that you slow down. Speed up if it's not that important, but when it comes to something that's super important, like the way that your research will revolutionize the world, then slow down at those moments. Speed up if it's not that important, or talk normal. But when you're about to say something that is important, simply slow down. It allows for the audience to recognize what's being said right now. That's something that I need to listen to. And this will help create a nice flow. Give context about what you're doing and talk about your research and how excited you are and never this, and hear your problem, your solution, and your market. But when it comes to those elements that you want them to remember, the important stuff, simply slow down. It's a very powerful tool, and oftentimes people don't utilize it. Secondly, is the volume. Because if your volume is low, people won't maybe see you as energetic. And let's say if I get this entire presentation this whole time at this low volume, you'd be like, what is this guy saying? You wouldn't take me that seriously. But if you just add a little bit more volume to your words, or you choose certain points that you want to accentuate and be like, and then that's when I realized this was a problem. I'm saying the same words. I'm just increasing the volume with it. And now I'm not saying you should get up there and shout the whole time. Don't do that, because that would be a little bit intense. But recognize that the volume that you have will help to make a dramatic impact on when people know to listen. And so if you actually combined your elements that you want to have a little bit more energy, or you're talking about the research or the results or the impact that it's going to have, just create a little bit more volume, and it will translate to energy and enthusiasm and excitement. It's a good one. Now, pitch and melody. Imagine that I talk like this for the entire 3 minutes or the entire program. It may seem a little bit ridiculous because I sound like a robot, but believe it or not, a lot of you will sound like robots because you are trying to memorize things and you are trying to put them out there, and you will put people to sleep. If you want to make something that's a bit more palatable for your audience, the idea is to use melody in your voice, a little bit of up, a little bit of down, a little bit of here, a little bit of there, a little bit of all around. So play with the vocal variety, and it will add depth to your presentation. And finally, tonality. So I'll show you here what typically happens. You see my face? It seems like I'm excited. It's because I simply am just talking with a smile on. So I naturally have more energy about my words. Now, if I were to take just my face, but say the same thing and actually talk with just a stone face, or even a face that's sort of like scared, you can pick up in my tone of voice that like the tone changes because my face and my head is crinkled because if I'm angry and I have these facial features, it dictates now the words that I'm saying, it sounds like I'm angry, although it's just words coming out of my mouth. And so you can utilize this to your advantage. If you're talking about the problem and how people are dying, if that makes you angry, then make your face look angry and it will make it just hit that much more. Why does this need to happen? On the other side, if you are talking about how you are so excited about your research findings, then just make sure that you put a smile on it when you're doing it and the energy will come through. So many times I've seen presentations where individuals with a stone cold face say, I am super excited about this presentation. This has been the highlight of my undergraduate career, and I'm excited to see this go to the world. Are you really excited? No. Well, maybe you are, okay? But if you say the same thing just with a smile, this is super exciting to me, and it's maybe one of the pinnacle moments of my research career here. It just changes everything. So don't forget, your face dictates your tone, so control your face and control your tone. All right, a lot of good stuff. Okay, I know this is a lot. Now I'm going to step you through 10 different tips for the actual filming. This is going to help your presentation be more crisp, more professional, and thus a better chance for you to win. Number one, know your stuff. Okay, really know your stuff. And that means, what is the problem? What is the solution? What is the market? Be very confident about the knowledge that you are going to be sharing. Okay, that will come across. So practice, practice, practice. Know it. That is a huge help. People always underestimate the value of practice. Now, you want to be authentic. So you don't want to be like overproduced. Don't get too crazy with it. Just be real, be authentic. Remember, this is like share your experience. You don't have to be the expert. So don't be ideal, be real. And that's you. Be who you are. All of your funkiness, all of your quirkiness. Okay, own it. Shorter is better. And that's why this 3-minute pitch is an awesome opportunity for you to condense things down to the short. Now, if you're even, if you're considering that you're just trying to pack as much information here as possible, you're going to end up having to talk real fast. There's a good chance that you might end up going overtime or just confusing people because there's so much information. So shorter is better. Use a good microphone. Maybe borrow one from a friend, but having good sound quality in your video is paramount to having a good video. So don't just trust your laptop speakers. Make sure you have a microphone or maybe your AirPods or something where the sound is crisp. Find a quiet place. You don't want a lawnmower going on the outside or a dog barking or anything like that. Make sure that you're filming in a quiet place. Make eye contact with the camera. Okay? Try to not like avoid looking around and do a couple practice takes so that you can find the spot on your screen. It's like, I'm pretty sure the spot I'm looking is right on. But if I look over here in the corner or down in this corner, over to the side, you can sort of see that I'm all over the place. So be confident and look directly at the lens. Now, since you're recording on Zoom, you might even be able to have notes in that position so that you can use that as a guide. And also make sure you have a timer so you can visually see. And if you're presenting, maybe even set a 3-minute or 2-minute and 50-second timer with a buzzer in your pocket. Don't make the audio on so the judges know, but keep yourself on time and keep yourself in line on the eyes. Okay, use body language. Now, when we're in this little box, it's kind of hard. So having some go-to moves and knowing like the problem was this big, or like that's where we put things together. You can use your hands, just think those through ahead of time so that you don't end up doing nervous movements and taking away from your presentation. So what are your go-to moves? You can use size, okay? You can be hands at your side. You can use the finger steeple. You can actually point or refer to the slide since you're going to be up in the corner. Just figure out your moves. Slow down. You're going to get excited. You're going to get nervous. You're going to speak fast. And you might not put pauses where you think they should be. I know pausing actually feels like maybe nails on a chalkboard and makes you nervous. But when you pause and you slow things down a little bit, it makes it easier for your audience to digest the information. So keep that in mind. Make sure you breathe. Take a couple deep breaths beforehand. It's okay to breathe while you're in your presentation. Most of the time, people forget to breathe because they're so caught up in the moment. So breaths can be a good natural break in your presentation. And finally, like have fun. right? This is a fun opportunity for you. And if a judge is watching the video and you look miserable or you look like you're uncomfortable, it's not going to resonate as much as you just being fun and being there and being yourself. I know this is not easy. And this is something that you're going to have to continue to work towards, is being comfortable, being uncomfortable. But when you have fun with it, you can turn that anxiety and those nerves into excitement. I'll leave you with this. Pitching is an art form and influence is an art form. And so you have an opportunity to help change the way people think and help them take action. And finally, if you do want some help, we are here to help you at the Entrepreneur Center. Now, if you don't know what the Entrepreneur Center is, it is where anteaters who have ideas come to thrive. And you are an entrepreneur, an anteater who's an entrepreneur, whether you realize it or not. I hope that this training helped you in your journey to this 3-minute pitch. And remember, this type of an approach of explaining your research in a way that's compelling to a common person who is not scientifically, I don't want to say scientifically aware, but somebody who's just not a scientist, who's not a researcher. This is a really good opportunity because you can have the best idea in the world. You can have the best research in the world. But if you can't explain it in a compelling way, in a simple way, in a way where people can feel your excitement, then unfortunately it no longer becomes the best idea or the best research in the world. So you worked hard for this. So work hard to communicate it. Again, my name is Ryan. You can find me at the Entrepreneur Center. I'm here to help you on this journey. And if the idea of translating your research into some business or into something that can be larger than beyond the bench, we're here to help you navigate that. We're a good place to start. We can always help point you in the right direction. All right, that's what I've got for you. I believe in you. You can do this. Keep it simple. Make it powerful. You got this. Practice, practice, practice. Come to the office hours at the Entrepreneur Center, or even just drop on by. Okay, we'll see you. Good luck. You got this. Zot, zot, zot.